Hello and welcome to the Srijan Wednesday webinar. If you are joining us for the first time, this is a community initiative by Srijan Technologies, where you can tune into some great sessions on topics ranging from front-end technologies, UI/UX, mobile apps, to media, entrepreneurship, community building, and digital marketing. As for today's webinar, we all gather a ton of data on user behavior when they are browsing through our website. But in today's session, we will move beyond the website and focus on all the additional information that we can gather if we look at users' complete online activity patterns and preferences. We will learn how all of this data can be leveraged to help us devise a better content strategy. Taking us through this exciting session is Obaid Malik. Obaid is passionate about engineering, teams, delivery, solutions, culture, and agile practices. He is a portfolio lead, a certified Scrum Master, and SAFe program consultant, leading the Srijan teams at a reputed global consultancy firm. Thanks, Obaid, for joining us today. Before we start with the session, I would request all participants to please type in any questions that you have during the presentation, and we'll take them up in the last 15 minutes of this session. Also, please don't forget to take the conversation live on Twitter using our hashtag SrijanWW. So without taking up any more time, let's get started. Obaid, over to you.
Great. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. This is Obaid here. And before I get into the presentation, I'd like to give a quick, shout out that I am neither a data scientist nor a formal content strategist. As per the introduction, I lead the teams at one of our offshore clients, but have been deeply interested in, web content management and data science as well. So before starting off the slides, I'll give us a quick video that will give us a round of introduction on, a premise on what we're going to talk about. And here it is. Great. So hopefully, you could see or gather from the short clip that what we're going to talk about is content strategy and how data science and data analytics can help streamline that. We've worked on building a large number of websites and have interacted on a large number of occasions with content strategists, content editors, content managers, and based on their inputs and based on some other statistics which we could gather ourselves from our products and also from varied discussions on the media, we've had some insights and some ideas around how data science and analytics could help strengthen content strategy. So this is actually an opportunity for me to share it with all of you all and hope that it drives your interest and also gives rise to a couple of new ideas that we could base on what we're going to talk about today. Now, sorry I've got a sore throat, so I might be coughing and wheezing in between. Please forgive me for that. So one of the assumptions on the presentation today is that we've got a website or a number of them, and we're constantly pumping out engaging content, and we already have a solid distribution strategy in motion. And what we're going to talk about is the actionable insights that would enable us in creating the desired impact with the content that we have branded on our portals. The biggest challenge in content strategy is that there is no magic formula for creating content that engages audience and basically helps us in driving the bottom line benefits, which is gathering more readership and more shares. So getting the right content to the right user at the right time in the right context is the ultimate aim of the content strategy. Now, that definition by itself, lets us believe that we already have or have already sought the answers to some of these questions as to who are our customers, what do they want from us today, where are they consuming content, and so forth. Because the online behavior of our users, and I'm going to use the term consumers not just in the context of e-commerce websites, but for all users who would consume our content which we have on our portals. So the online behavior for consumers can be fickle, and it's difficult to understand and gather facts around their behavior so that we can form our content strategies. And unfortunately, like I said, there is no magic formula for that. So what we do as a general norm is to identify the data around a lot of parameters that would help us and enable us to derive these information, and helps us create the desired impact with our branded content. So some of the common data that we collect are some of the statistics, like pages that are converting well by looking at pages which have highest number of visitors, highest unique visitors, highest page hits. And then we also get into other statistics like identifying and analyzing high bounce rates, unique visitors. We also have our analytics by using tools like Plateau or Omniture or Google Analytics, where we identify the query parameters and that enables us to find what is the content that our users are consuming the most, how do they arrive at those data points. And then sometimes we also get enriched with more information about what content is missing. When we see that people are searching for certain keywords and we don't have a result set that goes out as a response to that, we understand where the holes are in our content, and we are able to effectively plug those holes by actions from our content editors. Like I said, we are already using a number of tools for that. Some of the common ones, like I mentioned, Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, which is also known as Site Catalyst right now after it was acquired by Adobe. In the context of Drupal, we have modules for all of this, and in the context of other content management platforms like Joomla or any other, there are plugins or apps that enable us to get this delivered. And we come up with some graphs, like I have a snapshot of here, just as an example from a very old snapshot, where we are finding out the data around what the category of the content is, the date published, when it was consumed, the author or the content manager who posted it, data around the hits on it, data around the shares in it. Because essentially, like I said, at the end of it, our content strategy revolves around getting maximum user engagement and shares so that it further ripples across to other users. But then, is this enough? So that's where another question comes in. Essentially, as we keep on investing in our content, do we derive a proportionate amount of benefit from it? Do we see the readership and shares increasing accordingly? Unfortunately, not many of us can answer in the affirmative to that. And that kind of brings us to the next step, where we try to concentrate more on deeper analytics and user behavior and see how it can help us drive our content strategies. So with time, things change. Traditionally, or even during the shelf life of a website, as we go live with it, the initial questions are around what would be published. We are more concentrated on that. But then as further on, newer questions start coming up when the shelf life increases about what is published will be discovered. That's a question. How do we make what we have published discoverable by users? And that is a completely different game. And in a limited market, the initial question would have been prevalent, but in an era of abundance, now that we have more content, we have more investment, we have inherited a new and fundamentally different role. Like I said, figuring out how what is published will be discovered, but we really haven't solved the problem in itself. By constantly using data and adopting a data-led culture, we might be able to make a significant change for the better in our content strategies. By scrutinizing every element of our content strategy, we can create a robust plan that everyone can believe in. When it's based on data, it's easier to for other people to believe in it, whether it's internal teams or external teams. We have the opportunity to revisit our strategies based on newer, deeper data-based discoveries, whether they're around when to post, which author to post, the content from who is getting more readership, by whom, by when, where, questions like these, social engagement, the type of content to post. So stronger strategy to identify new opportunities develop when we have a data-driven culture and a data-driven mindset. Now, that brings us to the next stage of content, where we're talking about intelligent content. Content that behaves and customizes itself in real time when there is a call to action based on the analytics data that we collected, improving each variation for the customer. And not just for every customer, but for each customer, even on different occasions. If you're able to customize that call to action, there is a completely different impact created. Of course, data tracking in such cases is more complicated, but at the same time, it is more accurate as well. The insights that come up from such can help us improve the customer's experience of that content, because there are more questions to ask and more journeys to track of the user. That brings us a further step to understanding the relationship between data analytics and content strategy. Now, we've already agreed, from our earlier slides, hopefully, that the value of a data-driven culture is undeniable, and as the cloud evolution increases in its momentum, we see and experience that both data access and data storage is streamlined. Data monetization is now a crucial competitive factor. So the next question then that comes up is, how can we transform this accumulated data and the ease of storing, accessing, and streamlining data into results for our clients, and hence for our business as well, for ourselves, for the entire ecosystem? We've seen that, so essentially, the other fact that we've observed is, as the site ages and we have more investment in content, we have more focused content strategies currently as well. There is huge amount of money being pumped into generating relevant content. Then shouldn't the aha moment, as I call it, come more often? I mean, when we had X amount of content or data on our side, and we were getting A amount of aha moments based on the statistics that we see of readership and share, when we grow that X amount of content to X plus 10X, then shouldn't the aha moment and the statistics of readership and shares increase at least in some proportion? But unfortunately, that's not the case that we've been observing on a large number of websites. And we do understand that this is a problem that's plaguing a large number of site owners, content managers, basically around the entire domain of content management itself. So that leads us to the question of trying to see whether are we trying to solve a chicken and egg allegory? Because when we actually frame our customers and we have limited their conversion to only what we can supply, that is, all of our statistics, all of our analysis are being done within the perimeters of our site, and we want to solve a problem which is within the site itself. In other words, if the potential for our growth is limited to the content we have and the engagement that we can create from just that, how do we grow beyond the ambitions of our site? So the obvious answer to that is we need to go beyond the demographic segmentation of our audience. We cannot just try and do deeper, richer analytics just based on the statistics on our site. We need to drill deeper into customers' characteristics, what drives them to come to our site, what content they're consuming, their behavior, formation of customer personas, which we're already doing based on data from our side. But we probably need to go a step further, right, outside of our site. Now, when we say outside of our site, the first thing that comes up is social media. So social media analytics can define or redefine our approach to content, posting schedules, channels, understanding user behavior, etc. So we have a large number of data being connected, and collected from Facebook, a large number of other social media as well already, Twitter, like I said, LinkedIn, maybe. But then, is that still enough? We've got a large number of tools like Optimal Social, Cred. We've got Keyword. We've got Uber Suggest. Large number of tools where we're getting insights about content on our site, but from data collected from outside our site, from these social media. But in spite of doing that, we're still not there yet. And that's the big question. That brings us to the thought that we're going to talk mainly about today, the content strategy 2.0 and how that works with data analytics. Like I said, if most of our content strategies are based on site-based analytics, then we're kind of building a frame around our customers and limiting their conversion to the insights or the analytics that we can gather only from the activities on our sites. So let's stretch our gaze further on. As you know, a user is interacting so much in the environment outside of our websites, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Just some data to understand this engagement. So a data from January 2014, and it's not even real time or the latest data. We know that 67% and 92% are owners who use social media and who own an account. So on Facebook, Twitter, Google, Pinterest, LinkedIn, you see the data. It's like 92% of the citizens of the United States, and taking United States just as an example, right? So out of that, 67% are active users. And we've noted that, in the last 10 years, there's been a tenfold jump in the number of people that are getting onto social media. 65% of adults now use social networking sites, and the numbers keep growing. So often we ask, when we try to understand users, the question comes up, and you'll hear large number of content strategy experts talking about knowing your users. So let's see, who knows our users the most. As you can see over here, 75% on social media. And on an average, a person spends 2 hours, 17 minutes each day. Each day, a person spends 2 hours, 17 minutes disseminating information about himself or herself, about his preferences, about his prejudices, about his or her interests, about his or her plans for the next day, shopping plans, travel plans. There's this huge gamut of information that's coming out. And are we really able to tap into it right now? I mean, 2 hours, come on, I think in this age, that's about the time that each of us spent with our family members after work and our, private hobbies, etc. So, and we say that our family knows us the best. but probably the social medias that we interact with are actually well better informed about us, you know, on a superficial level at least. So imagine the influence that this ecosystem has on our customers. So it's an ecosystem where he's not just giving out information, but ingesting and digesting information as well. And something that, you know, transforms his way of looking at things, his behavior, his psychology, and that essentially without, you know, without any loss, that absolutely has an impact on the way he is going to behave on my site today. For example, this user, you know, after his interactions today, I am sure that I would be able to get some information about him and how he's going to behave on my, you know, website. And just giving myself as an example, each of us, if we are content managers, content strategists, or site owners, or even, you know, bloggers, for example, we know that, you know, by tapping into this information that he or she, their potential consumer, spends 2 hours, you know, sharing each day, if we can tap into that data, there's so much more that we can do on how the information on our site behaves with that user, with that consumer, and especially if we have intelligent content on our site. So that's where the intelligent content fits in with our content strategy and then the data analytics. Let's look at the recommendation engines, for example. Just as an example, do we really feel that our recommendation engines are actually able to understand our customers? For example, you know, when a user comes to the site and he searches for Samsung phones, I give him a search result set based on the logic that I've coded in my search engine or my search module that gives him a list of mobile devices, or at the most other products from Samsung. But have we tried to understand that, is this what the user really wants? Could there be a case where he is actually being prejudiced to Google or to search for Samsung on our website because he's been ingesting a lot of information about Samsung today? And what if we're able to understand that this is actually the cause? What if we are able to understand that nobody has been talking about Sony as a brand to him today, for example, you know, not trying to promote or demote any brands or such, but just as an example. What if we understand that probably he's searching for Samsung today only because he hasn't had any chatter in his social media network about Sony or about, you know, LG being a good or a competitive mobile manufacturing company? And what if we, once after understanding that, based on the data that we've gathered, are actually able to give search results based on this information, give him or nudge him with content about LG phones and say how good LG phone is or how it compares with Samsung phones, for example, right? And this is just one example. I mean, we could think about it, and there could be hundreds of examples that come up immediately based on whatever domain each of us are in. So, you know, even on such a very basic function about data set being returned based on a search by the user himself, we see that so much more can be thought of. And then, you know, if you imagine intelligent content which has to behave without any user intervention or user choices, the you know, the spectrum where we can leverage this just becomes manifold. So here's a slide where I'm trying to talk about how a person's identity, roles, you know, general psychology, human behavior, and hence behavior on websites as well are influenced by his colleagues, family, you know, his physical social network as well. And since we cannot trap that, the only way to do is by tracking, you know, his or her interactions on social media networks. I hope that's making sense so far. Well, now, like I said, it's difficult to track the physical interactions, of course, probably impossible for us, you know, and but what's revealing and what's, you know, very beneficial for us to know is that there's this huge data trail that customers leave behind during their online journeys, not just on a site, but on other, you know, websites like Facebook, other social media, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, there's this data trail that's left behind by the customer, and essentially which, if we are able to track and tap into, we get so much better at understanding our audience. The quality of content that resonates for the user. So there are three parameters: the correct content, the correct time, and in the correct context. If we are able to give or push content to our users that rhymes with his or her particular state of mind at that particular moment when he hits our site, then we would have effectively succeeded in our ultimate, in our ideal aims or ambitions of content strategy. So the more we have, the more we know about our audience, the more effectively we are able to deliver on that. There's this classic example where, a couple comes to know that their daughter is pregnant because the daughter has been hiding it from her parents, but they come to know about it because, they are now continuously getting bombarded by ads of diapers. So what I mean to say is, up to some level, what we are talking about has been tapped into and been, done by advertisements, by the ad company, and up to some level by digital marketing and social marketing. But in the content strategy space, this is yet to be there. And even on these other domains, we are still yet to get there effectively, but at least we've made a head start there. So like I said, once we understand these prejudices that and influences that a person's social media network has on his or her behavior physically and on our site as well, there's going to be this gamut of things that we can do based on that. So for example, if I as a content manager of for example is able to see that a user comes to my site and I have content about say travel to Bahamas, for example. I'm a travel site and I have a package about travel to Goa, for example. Goa is a beach in India, for anyone who's not from India. Very popular beach for that matter, especially around New Year and Christmas. It gets pretty crowded there. Yeah, so if I have content about that on my site and I see that users are not engaging with it much, but then when I trace, and of course with permission from the user, when I trace his or her activities on Facebook, for example, and I see that he's engaging in a lot of content about Goa and travel to beaches, etc., that could be an indicator for my content management team that we may not be able to actually effectively deliver it, right? Because our content is not good enough. If you see that there are lots of shares, tweets of related content on social media, but not so much on our site, we can probably understand, that the content of a quality may not be good. So they have a couple of examples which I will jump for lack of time. Now, another example is, if, for example, if I can track that on social media, on Facebook, you're talking about Ladakh, which is another, trekking heaven in India, northern India. If you're talking about Ladakh on Facebook, then the minute you come to my site, if I have content about acclimatization, because Ladakh is a very high altitude place, I can actually pump that content to you, push that content to you as promoted to you today, which is relevant for you at the particular moment. If you're talking about getting a pair of new running shoes, for example, on Facebook or on Twitter or wherever, if I am able to get that information, then on my site, what I could do is, if I have a blog post about, tips to wake up early, I can push that content to you as a promoted content today. And it is a content that strikes exactly what you're looking for. See it. So, there's so much more we can do. It's not just about, building strategies to make content being easily discoverable, but making them discoverable and auto push it to you at the time, in the correct context, at the correct time on every visit to the site. Every time you visit the site, we parse through this data and then understand you more and push the relevant content to you. For example, if you're unwell and we are a health blog post or a website, or if we have content about health, then we can push some content about healthy living to you, right? So another example, which on one of the I'll just take a couple of minutes more. I think I'm overshooting at time though. I'll quickly try to wrap this up. So is one of the attendees at the last DrupalCon where we presented this came up to me after the session and said, wow, this is such a great idea. He mentioned that he's in the travel industry space, and he says that if he's able to find out from that if by some means, if he's able to analyze that a user of his site is talking about a competitor company and saying that he's not going with them because their pricing is too high, or their package is about 5 days whereas he only has 3 days, and if he's able to get that information, he says that the edge I can have over them is out of this world. I can quickly build up a package that suits such content, such a user, and when a user hits our site, push it out to him appropriately so that he can ingest it and convert the user into an actual consumer. So in the best interest of time, I'll try to wrap it up quickly. So more content in intelligent investment does not come out of the box, right? So essentially it does mean we need a proper analytics plan, and it is complicated. We need to have a strategy and an execution plan for it. And across the industry, data analytics are helping us become smarter, more productive, better at making predictions. And why not do that for our content strategy as well? McKinsey Insights, a study by them, says 84% of marketers do not have a formal content strategy. And instead, in spite of that, content budgets continue to increase. A year-over-year content spending rises by more than 25%. So a technical roadmap for that, quickly I'll try to talk about it, is initially it would be a user coming to the site based on statistics of a site response. But now what we could do is we could use some big data technologies. And I'm not saying big data is essentially the solution for this. You could just simply have an array of servers, or simply use the cloud, which is becoming so easier to access and work with here. So before the user comes to our site, we get all of this information. We have some good analytics, some logics that run on big data. Maybe we use Hadoop, or maybe we use some R programming language for building those logics, and do our analytics on the cloud, on a set of our own parallelly lined up cluster of servers, get the analytics done, get the information, and then that is pumped into our site. And at the content rendering or content building stage on our respective platforms, whether it's Drupal, Joomla, or WordPress, whatever, then that information is customized and made to behave intelligently. So at the crux, solid understanding of our target customers and their world, not just the customers, which we are doing till now, but their world as well, the impact to the world, the impact from the world, and how it affects the user, understand that change in behavior, and our content responds accordingly to that. This will help us develop, relevant content. Helps us take the right action for maximum benefits. Now, it may not be feasible to truly develop one-to-one content as a scale for each user every time he visits it, but we can at least use this data to pinpoint some common characteristics, divide the users into some segments, and then prioritize and develop our content strategies according to that. Yes, and which is a fundamental clause as in data science and data analytics. We can get the answers, and how correct the answers would be to solve a problem is only when we ask the right questions. Thank you. So I'll look forward to any questions that we have.
All right, Obed, thank you for that very interesting presentation. And it looks like there is a lot of possibility in analyzing all of this data that we gather from the social networks in order to make intelligent content. And we really look forward to all our attendees who can type in any questions that you have, and we'll take them up one by one. But right now, what I would like to ask Obed is that could you elaborate a little bit more on the part when you talked about the technical roadmap on how to build intelligent commerce?
Sure, sure. So I think I actually mistook the time. I see that we do have a couple of minutes more. So yeah, sorry. So I'll trace back to the last part on technology. So essentially, how most content management systems work is we have the user visiting a site. We trap the user's data we are already doing some user personas, and we trap the data based on that and give back information. But it's all dependent still only on the behavior of the user on our site, right? It doesn't take into account the behavior which may have changed since the last visit. And this is pretty hard coded and static. Now what we're talking about is including some kind of a middle layer where we have the analytics running there. So we get these data points from different social media networks like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And of course there are going to be conversations around privacy, and of course we need to get the approval of the users for allowing us to parse their data fields and feeds, and even maybe their friend lists, what they're talking about, what they're posting, what they're sharing, what they're commenting on. So all of these by the Facebook or other social media, their own APIs, we can fetch that data and throw that data onto our analytics layer. And we're already doing that, right? I mean, if you look at it, we're talking about Facebook, say, we're already using Facebook authentication with our websites, but right now it's just being limited to authentication, right? And we're not going beyond that, but we could go beyond that and get these data, throw it onto our layer of analytics, and there we would need some data analysts, our programmers or Hadoop experts, or people who can write those logics in at the map reduce layer on Hadoop, or code that into on the R programming language, run the analytics and fetch the data what we would require. Now, like I said, it's easy to get data, and that's the biggest challenge even in data science, outside of the context of what we're talking about, whether we are asking the right questions or not, right? So that's where we need a combination of experts. We need content strategists. We need probably somebody who understands human behavior or human psychology. We need statisticians to come up with these predictive models or analytics models. And then we need experts on data analytics who can actually code that into some programs. And once that data is given back, we ingest that onto our site. So for each user, every time he hits us, and we can think, and then there are going to be questions around performance and optimization, but that's a completely different set, right? I would leave it up to the experts to see how we can best, deal with that. But essentially, what I'm talking about is getting data from this layer of analytics engine and putting that, taking that into our own website, and data collection from our site. The data is obviously being taken out from our side. We fetch the appropriate data based on this analytics, and then display them to the user. And that could be at the business model or the templating layer, because it could be just about prioritizing or choosing which section of the page where we display a particular content, or even before that choosing which content to display at the business layer while we get it from the database and throw it back to the user via a Drupal templating system, or any templating system on whichever platform we're using. So here is sorry so here's a bit of a quick sketch up again. Like I said, I'm not a data analyst expert or a Hadoop engineer, but this is something that based on what we know and what I understand is possible. And of course, like I said, I would leave it up to the experts to to choose whether we actually require a Hadoop ecosystem, whether it's actually a big data case. It may not be, and just some simple, logic coded in PHP itself might be fine, or maybe some R on R Apache, where it does that programmatic logic, churns out the data that we want and gives it back to our system for using that appropriately, could be an option as well. Or it could actually be a big data, and we may actually go with Hadoop, or some layer over it called Yarn, or whatever. But that's a completely different big discussion in itself as well, which calls for a completely different webinar, I would say.
All right. So
And
this topic also.
and
Would you like to add something, Obey?
no, sorry. So what I was trying to hint towards at the end is we need a unifying strategy, a governance or a system to create cohesion, to reuse assets, and effectively measure across the company's supply chain, etc. When I talk about supply chain, I mean content manufacturer, content collection, content editorial team. So all of them need to come together. We need to draw a detailed roadmap for investing in assets. Like I said, it requires a proper strategic plan. We need to invest in assets such as technology, tools, data sets, etc. And we need to tackle the intrinsic challenges of securing commitment, reinventing processes, changing organizational behavior as well. All of them put together can then impart the appropriate impact that we're looking for. Our collection of content, which synthesizes key insights drawn from many analytics projects, sets out the key issues, whether we are launching a pilot project or a large-scale transformation. So data analytics definitely aids discovery. It provides insights that can transform content creation, content strategies, content consumption even, and marketing. Just as we leverage the best analytics tools, we should also focus on taking the right action for maximum benefits.
All right. So what you're saying is that the topic also needs a lot of work from people other than just content strategists. We need to bring in analysts and developers who could actually take this and make it into a reality for intelligent content, right?
Absolutely. And from the organizational leadership as well, because it involves investment in technologies, there's got to be budget allocated for it. I mean, wrong data is as harmful as no data. So we need the appropriate expertise in these, and which calls for investment. But in the long run, there's a very high chance, which has been proven by a large number of key players, that are leveraging data analytics, that it leads to success, and it's the ROI, the return on investment on it is absolutely stunning.
All right. So if this is a field that has such immense possibility, and if we are already using some of the data from social networks in order to run our ads or target them better, why hasn't it up till now been used for a content strategy? Was it because of technological challenges or business challenges? Why has it not been done yet?
Yeah, good question there. Good question. And I think it's not technology as a challenge, because the technology in the data analytics space is far ahead of what we're talking about. I think it's basically kind of envisioning how we could leverage that for content strategy. Till now, I think we were mostly thinking that it's the readership depends upon just the content quality, and I think the space of content strategy hasn't been in parallel or at the same pace with data analytics. Maybe marketing, digital marketing has been at a faster pace, and it's still trying to keep up, but it's much ahead than content strategy in my perspective. But in content strategy, I think it's just that we haven't probably maybe really thought about it. I mean, I don't know how many of us are here on the call, but how many of us have really thought that we could do this, and even if not yet implemented, have, you know, gone to a layer of trying to implement such things. I mean, there are a couple of projects coming up right now, right? Hugely funded projects like the Coral project. If anybody is interested, you know, if you could go to coralproject.net, for example, one which is a joint product of Mozilla and the Knight Foundation, that, you know, kind of helps the community of news content creators, designers, data reporters. There's one project called Open News, opennews.org, if anybody can Google that. So I believe we are getting there, but this has yet to be tapped by content owners on, you know, content driven websites. They're you know, shooting off as new projects in themselves, but we could essentially, you know, I think large enterprises already have these technologies that we are talking about. We may not even need to invest in them, you know. So I think it's just that we haven't really gotten to do it.
Alright, so the next question I have here is that like a sort of an example. So if we have a, let's say we have a company like Srijan who works with different sorts of technologies, so who provides technological services. So how would you go about mapping a kind of a customer persona, and what what sort of social networks or what sort of online behavior would you monitor for a customer persona for a company that provides technological services, let's say?
Sure. So I think, again, you know, that depends upon what problem we are trying to solve, right? I mean, if so, I gave some examples, right? So whether a tech company or whether a travel industry, they would have similar kinds of business. The main objective is to convert, you know, convert into consumers, convert users into consumers. So like I said, right, if you can get an understanding of, so not just in the context of Srijan, but, you know, generally, if we are able to understand what we are better at, right, or what users perceive that we are better at, which is maybe another way of looking at it, and probably a more important one as well, which I would again leave to our experts in marketing and sales to kind of, you know, help us understand. But yeah, so what users see us being experts at, what users see my competitors being experts at, and why, what users see my competitors on a lesser expertise than me, and why. If I'm able to trap these information, to start off with, right, there's so much more, you know, we can get into details for each offering or each service line that we have, or each offering or service line that we want to have, you know, to understand who the competitors would be a day or two down the line, or a year or two down the line, when all of this information we can gather from our you know, from our segmented users. So essentially, in, you know, in any data analytics, what we would normally do is we would choose a set of users which we call as the population, right? It's never really done on 100% set of the users, the analytics. And I'm taking a step away from, you know, what I presented about each user personify building and all of that stuff. So once we choose that population, you know, the appropriate population based on whatever Srijan's needs are, or whatever this travel company's needs are, or whatever any tech company's needs are, and then, you know, whether the population is you know, whether the population is a set of converted users who are now our consumers, or a population who are potential consumers, or a population from our competitors. And if you can get information from all of these, you know, I think it's pretty evident the advantage or edge we can have against another peer who is not doing these analytics, right? So from a simple example, right, I mean, not even getting into our business models, just from the content that we have on our website, where we showcase who Srijan is, or who X company is, who we are, what we are good at, you know, what we do better, why you should come to us. That content, if you're able to have multiple versions of them, and based on a user who's coming, you know, for in whatever way we are able to personify that, and you know, tailor it and the content we push back, we display it appropriately, I think there's this huge advantage, right? The last example I was giving about specifically talked about that, about a travel agency, right? Where a travel agent company finds out that a user is not happy with their competitors duration of stay in a particular package. He traps it out from the chatter on this person's social media, and when that user comes to the site, he has another package ready which is of a lower duration. So essentially there's been a strategy that you would have different number of days, different variations of the package with 3 days, 5 days, 7 days. So when this user comes here, he throws him the content for that same package but for 3 days, and you can see the impact there against the other travel agent company which always has a 5-day static package that goes out to every user that comes in. I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yes, it definitely makes it a lot more clear. We have another question which refers to another point in your presentation where you said that tapping into what people are talking about in social media can also help you realize if your content is not of good quality. So
Yeah.
so the question is, would it tapping into this chatter, would it also tell you if your content strategy or your SEO strategy or marketing efforts are, let's say, have reached a saturation level or not up to the mark? Could you just like elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. Like again, I won't go too much into details on digital marketing. Essentially, I'll try to stick to our parameters of content strategy here. But of course, that that information can be transferred and adapted, I guess. Yeah. So as an example, right? For example, I see that a person is sharing a lot of information about Drupal, for example, sharing a lot of information about Drupal on social media, on Facebook. But then when the user comes to my technology blog, I see that the user is hardly sharing posts from my website, which essentially is an indicator that the person has an interest in Drupal, but still is not engaging too much, neither commenting or neither sharing content on my site. Essentially could mean that my content is not up to mark. And if we take it a step further, whenever these things happen as part of the analytics or some other workflow on our Drupal site, we can actually have an automated notification going to our content managers or content editors telling that, hey, I believe that based on this and this, your so and so content needs to be revised. So these are the ways by which we can try to understand whether our content has been saturated, is not up to mark. For example, if a user is coming to our site and not searching for a keyword, say for example, a user comes to our site and we see that his keywords are lifestyle and technology but not travel, right? And then again, same thing, right? We see that this person actually is talking a lot about travel. He's visiting and liking a lot of travel related Facebook pages, blogs, sharing content there, but he hasn't even searched for it. Then the logic that goes back to our content strategist team could be that, hey, maybe you don't have content related to this. So, or it could be that we have content, but 5 months ago when the user was on our site and he did a keyword search, we did not have content on travel, and since then he's assuming that our content around travel is not there on our site. So maybe it's time to then send periodic reminders to such users, or a newsletter where for that particular set of segment of users, we're telling them about fresher content around travel. All of our newsletter strategy could also change if we have intelligent content going out there. I mean, at the end of the day, with so many modules, giving an example of Drupal, where even the content for newsletters is auto-generated from content on our site. Usually it's one single set of logic that drives it using views or custom code, whatever. You could actually have that as an intelligent, some intelligent layer for generating that, where we have different forms or variations of that which go out to users as well. So absolutely, I think there's a lot of data points in understanding user behavior on social networking sites, because there are lesser assumptions, right? It's a bigger scenario. The user has lesser assumptions, and for us, we are able to understand more about our own shortcomings or strengths even, right? Not just a shortcoming, about our strengths as well.
All right.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. So I have a follow-up question to that. But just before that, we have the last 5 minutes of the webinar left, and anybody who still has any questions for Obed can please type them in, and we'll just take them up very soon. Now, coming on to the follow-up question for this. So, if all of the data points are telling us that there is something wrong with our content strategy, is it also possible to use the same data points that could tell us exactly what we could do to make it better, or exactly where the problem is? Like, not where the problem is, but some actionable insights into how it could be made better.
uh, Sure. So I think I might have answered that in the last part. I'm not sure, but I'll just try to rephrase that again. So when we understand these data points, for example, like what content is missing, or what quality of content is there, then this can go as information back to our content editorial team. And like I said, if we even want to go a step further, the way that this information gathered from the analysis is conveyed to our content managers, even that we can try to streamline, where we're trying to build some kind of an automated notification mechanism for that.
Okay.
Does that, I hope that answers the question.
All right. Okay. So there is a lot of possibility in everything that you have outlined for us in today's session, and I hope uh, everybody who is.
Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I think we lost you for a sec there, but yes.
Sorry for that. So, what Obed has, the strategy or the session that Obed has laid out today for us has a lot of possibilities, and I hope everybody who has attended the session takes back a lot of actionable points and can work further to strengthen this strategy. And so, with that, we have come to the end of our webinar today. And thank you, Obed, for leading such an interesting session. And thank you all our attendees who have joined us today.
Thank you everyone for joining in. I hope this was an interesting session. And for anyone with any other thoughts, shares, or follow-up questions, feel free to email me. You can see it on the screen right now. My email ID is that, or feel free to tweet me, follow me on tweet, and I can get back to you, or follow up the discussion on the Srijan WW hashtag. I'll ensure that at least over the weekend, I try to respond to as much as I can to all of you all.
So all of our attendees, you know what to do if you have any more questions. And once again, thank you everyone for joining us today. And I would also like to announce that our next webinar is on Rails 5, and the new Rails that is soon coming up, and what's in it for you. And it will be hosted on the 6th of April 2016, and would be led by Prathamesh Sonpatki, who works with Big Binary. For registrations and more details, you will be getting a mail from us, so stay tuned. And thank you once again for joining us today, and we hope to see you on our next webinar.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.